The tweet dropped like a bombshell. At exactly 9:03 a.m., Elon Musk, the tech mogul who could move markets with a single sentence, posted something that sent shockwaves through the world. A cryptic message with only a few words, yet it was enough to send the entire crypto community and beyond into a frenzy. Get ready. Senator Kennedy is about to take a stand on DOGE. It's going to shake things up in ways you can't even imagine. With a single tweet, Elon Musk had just opened the floodgates to chaos. The world was buzzing. Was it a joke? Was it real? No one knew for sure, but everyone had a theory. The world reacts. Within minutes, social media exploded. Twitter timelines, filled with predictions, questions, and wild speculation. People were tagging their favorite news outlets, demanding answers, while crypto investors watched the price of Dogecoin shoot up, reacting to the news in real time. What does this mean for the future of Doge? Is Kennedy really getting into this? What's his angle? Is Elon Musk just playing us again? No one was calm. The usual memes, the usual banter, had turned into serious strategic conversations. As the market volatility surged, some investors saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, while others were paralyzed with uncertainty. In Washington, the situation was even more explosive. Reporters immediately began reaching out to Senator Kennedy's office. A few of them got through, but Kennedy's team had only one answer. "We have no comment at this time." But the clock was ticking. The speculation only grew louder. By lunchtime, major media outlets had picked up the story. CNN, Bloomberg, Fox News, all were scrambling to confirm the tweet. But while they questioned whether this was part of a larger political maneuver or just a tech billionaire's latest eccentric move, one thing was clear: something big was coming. The tension builds later that day. Elon Musk gave an interview. In his usual style, he was nonchalant, almost playful, despite the global attention. When asked about the implications of his tweet, Musk simply responded, "Senator Kennedy has been a key figure in politics for a long time, but I think it's time for him to understand what the future looks like. Dogecoin is a part of that future. Let's see where he stands." The tension in the air was palpable. The media buzzed with the idea that Musk, who had the power to sway markets, might be pushing for political influence in the world of cryptocurrencies. And Senator Kennedy, a respected political figure, suddenly found himself in the spotlight of an entirely new world. Hit subscribe and leave a comment. As the day wore on, the public couldn't help but feel intrigued. It was no longer just about Doge. It was about power. It was about change. It was about the future. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? By the next morning, the world was still reeling from Musk's tweet. The markets were in chaos. Dogecoin had surged to new heights, but so had skepticism. Every financial expert and crypto analyst was trying to unpack what had just happened and what it all meant. Some called it a publicity stunt, others an inevitable political shift. But no one could deny the ripple effect. The crypto community reacts on Twitter. The reactions were swift and polarized. A few crypto enthusiasts began championing the idea that this was the moment Doge would finally achieve legitimacy, backed by a senator. They joked, half seriously, about sending Kennedy a Dogecoin wallet and asking him to hodl for a brighter future. But not everyone was so excited. Dogecoin with political backing. "This feels like a setup," one user tweeted. "Elon Musk pulling strings behind the scenes? What's his real game?" another remarked. A small group of Dogecoin maximalists, those who believed in the currency's potential for decentralized power and freedom, took to the forums, rallying behind Musk's tweet. They believed Musk's endorsement of Kennedy meant something bigger was brewing. But the mainstream financial world, which had long regarded Dogecoin as a meme coin, was not so sure. And in the halls of power, where the stock market's volatility didn't even register, the growing power of cryptocurrencies, especially Doge, couldn't be ignored. The Senate reacts back in Washington. Senator John Kennedy's office was flooded with calls. The world wanted to know, was the senator really going to take a position on Dogecoin? Was he truly considering the future of cryptocurrencies, Or was this just another tech billionaire trying to push his agenda? The senator, a well-known figure in the Republican Party, had always been a staunch supporter of traditional finance and regulation. His career was built on defending the values of economic stability, and now he found himself at the crossroads of a new disruptive force. Kennedy had faced challenges before, but nothing quite like this. A new battlefront Kennedy, always calculated in his political moves, knew he couldn't ignore the situation. He issued a public statement. The future of finance is under serious debate, and we must be cautious about allowing unregulated digital currencies to disrupt the economic order. I will be addressing the Senate Finance Committee next week to discuss the implications of cryptocurrencies, including Dogecoin, on our economy. We must ensure the American people are not left vulnerable by speculative, volatile assets. The statement was met with a collective sigh of relief from the political establishment. Kennedy had spoken in familiar, measured tones. He had taken a strong stance, one that pushed back against the new era of digital currencies Musk was so keen on promoting. The senator's words calmed the nerves of those who feared Musk's influence was growing too fast, too recklessly. But what Kennedy didn't expect was the sheer force of backlash that would follow. Musk's response. A few hours later, Elon Musk tweeted again. The tweet was simple yet laced with undeniable sarcasm. I'm not sure how you can protect the people by holding them back from innovation. The future is coming whether we like it or not, and it's coming in the form of Dogecoin. The ripple effect was instant. Media outlets exploded, pushing the narrative that Musk was challenging the status quo in ways that no one had anticipated. And suddenly, it wasn't just about Dogecoin anymore. It was about the battle between a billionaire with revolutionary ideas and a politician trying to preserve a traditional system. The divided nation, the world was divided. On one side, the tech-savvy millennial and Gen Z crowds were enthralled by Musk's bold vision. They saw him as a visionary, someone who had always pushed the boundaries of what was possible. On the other side were older generations, more skeptical, about the sudden rise of cryptocurrencies, and especially about the potential influence Musk could wield over a currency like Dogecoin. They questioned whether this was a genuine financial innovation or just a way to profit off an unstable market. The crypto world buzzed, with debates about whether Kennedy's resistance was a sign of old-world politics trying to stamp out innovation. And for the first time in a long time, people began to ask themselves, what if this wasn't just about money or politics, but about the power to shape the future? A final twist. The story was far from over. But as the day came to an end, one more shocking revelation surfaced. The Financial Times reported that Senator Kennedy had been in private talks with influential figures in the cryptocurrency world for the past few months. Was it possible he had been preparing to take a stand on Dogecoin all along? The following days were a blur. In Washington, the media spotlight shifted into full gear. Speculation surrounding Senator Kennedy's next move reached a fever pitch. Could he continue to dismiss the growing force of cryptocurrency, or would he be swept up in the flood of innovation that Musk was pushing forward? Kennedy's next steps were not just about politics anymore. They had become a symbol of resistance against the rapidly shifting world of digital finance. But behind the scenes, things were moving faster than the public knew. The secret meeting, EE. The backrooms of Washington's power corridors, Senator Kennedy met with a small group of trusted advisors and financial experts. They sat around a polished mahogany table in a sleek, dimly lit room, the weight of the conversation palpable. Kennedy, always composed, appeared slightly disheveled, his usual crisp suit not quite masking the deep lines of thought on his face. "Listen," Kennedy began, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "Elon Musk is a force. He has the power to make or break markets with a single tweet. But is it enough to put our economic system at risk? I'm no expert on these cryptocurrencies, but I know they're not stable, and instability doesn't help working Americans." He leaned forward, his fingers steepled in front of his mouth as he mulled over his next words. The room was quiet as his team processed his thoughts. One of his top advisors, Amy Caldwell, spoke up. "Senator, the fact is, whether you like it or not, cryptocurrency is gaining traction. DOGE is just the beginning. People are starting to see it as the future of finance, whether it's stable or not. The question is, do we oppose it outright and risk alienating a massive new voter base, or do we find a way to regulate it? Kennedy looked up at her, eyes narrowing. Regulate it, you say? How do we regulate something we barely understand? These guys are moving faster than we can write laws. There's no blueprint for this. Amy exhaled, clearly frustrated, but understanding the gravity of the situation. We need to start somewhere, and it's better we lead the conversation rather than follow. A few of the other advisors nodded in agreement, but there was another underlying tension. Would Kennedy's resistance to Musk's tech-driven revolution make him an outcast in an increasingly digital world? His hesitation was palpable, but Kennedy had built his career on careful calculation. Every move mattered, and he wasn't going to make a decision that would jeopardize his future. Musk's offer. Meanwhile, across the country, Elon Musk was sitting in his sprawling California mansion, scrolling through the growing wave of comments and reactions to his public statement. He felt a sense of satisfaction watching his influence ripple across the globe, but there was one thing missing, a real challenge from Kennedy. It was time to escalate things. Musk's phone buzzed. It was a message from his PR team, highlighting a recent article in which Kennedy had made his statement about regulating cryptocurrencies. Musk's finger hovered over the screen before he quickly typed out another tweet. If Kennedy's interested in understanding the future of finance, he's welcome to meet me. We can talk about Dogecoin and we'll see where he stands. Otherwise, the future of money doesn't have time for politicians stuck in the past. He hit send. It was a direct challenge, a public dare for Kennedy to confront him head-on. Musk knew that it would push the senator into a corner, but he also knew that Kennedy's next move could make or break everything. It was a calculated risk, but Musk was used to those. Kennedy's dilemma. The tweet was on Kennedy's radar almost immediately. It didn't take long for the news to hit his desk, and it struck a nerve. Kennedy had been a constant critic of Musk's methods, but this was different. Musk had directly called him out, daring him to meet and discuss the future of DOGE. Kennedy's first reaction was one of irritation. He didn't want to give Musk any more attention than he already had. But deep down, the challenge intrigued him. Could Musk actually be right? Was cryptocurrency truly the future? Was he missing something? The public's view of him was shifting. If Kennedy remained steadfast in his opposition, he risked being left behind in the fast-moving technological world. But if he met with Musk, it would be admitting that he might not have all the answers. It was a classic Kennedy dilemma. Stand firm on principle, or take the risk of embracing something new and unknown. Amy Caldwell entered his office, sensing the weight of the moment. "Senator, we need to make a decision. Musk won't back down, and neither can we. If you don't take this opportunity to meet him, you'll be playing defense for the rest of this battle." Kennedy leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This wasn't just about Dogecoin anymore. It was about how he positioned himself. For the future. We can't let him make us look weak. "Fine," he said, his voice decisive. "Set it up, but this has to be on our terms. We'll meet him, but I want a fair shot to present my views." The stage is set. The next few days passed, in preparation. Kennedy's office worked hard to set up the meeting, and Musk's team quickly agreed, wanting to keep the momentum going. The media was already positioning the upcoming face-off as one of the most important debates of the decade. Could the politician and the billionaire find common ground, or was this destined to end in a collision of ideologies? The stage was set. As the time drew near, the world waited with bated breath. Would Kennedy's conservative stance win out, or would Musk's vision for a decentralized future prove too powerful to ignore? And with Dogecoin in the center of it all, the stakes were higher than ever. The day of the meeting had arrived, and the EI world was watching. The buzz in Washington was palpable. News outlets had set up around the venue, cameras flashing as reporters jockeyed for the best spots. The public was more excited than anyone could have predicted about what would happen when Elon Musk and Senator John Kennedy, two forces of nature from entirely different worlds, would finally sit down together. It was a quiet but tense morning. As Kennedy arrived at the meeting location, a neutral upscale conference room in the heart of Washington. His team had made sure to keep things discreet. No press, no fanfare, just a serious discussion. But the weight of what was to come hung heavy in the air. Kennedy had made his position clear, but now he had to face Musk head-on. Elon Musk, ever the showman, was already there. His usual mix of casual confidence and boundary-pushing charisma was on full display. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, his posture leaning slightly forward, like a man ready to dive headfirst into the unknown. His team had arranged everything, making sure that the tech mogul's every move was perfectly orchestrated. But despite the careful planning, Musk had a sense that this meeting could change everything. The icebreaker: when Kennedy walked into the room, the two men briefly locked eyes. A small, almost imperceptible nod from Musk was the first gesture of recognition. Kennedy, with his more traditional reserved demeanor, greeted him with a firm handshake before settling into one of the chairs. "Well, Senator, it's nice to finally meet in person," Musk said, his voice light but carrying an edge of amusement. "I have to say your comments have certainly caught the world's attention." Kennedy leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing as he responded. "I've been in politics long enough to know that attention doesn't always mean it's for the right reasons. But yes, I've heard your pitch. Now it's time for you to hear mine." Musk grinned slightly, leaning back in his chair. "I'm listening." The stage was set. Kennedy's team had prepared a comprehensive briefing on the potential risks of cryptocurrencies. They were armed with charts, statistics, and examples of how unregulated digital currencies could destabilize economies. Kennedy, as he had said earlier, didn't believe that the future of finance should be built on a system that wasn't grounded in solid regulation. Meanwhile, Musk's team had laid out their counter-arguments. Cryptocurrency, particularly Dogecoin, was a tool for financial freedom, a movement away from centralized financial control, and a way to give people more power over their own money. The clash of ideologies. The meeting didn't take long to heat up. Kennedy was quick to bring up the volatility of Dogecoin. "Look, Mr. Musk, I don't deny that you've created something interesting, but a currency that can fluctuate 50% in value overnight doesn't sound like a system I'd trust for the average American. How do you justify this?" Musk's eyes lit up. "The current financial system doesn't serve the average American either, Senator. It's rigged by banks, by Wall Street. Dogecoin is decentralized. It's not about stability in the traditional sense. It's about empowerment. It's about providing people a way to take control of their finances, without the red tape, without the bureaucracy. Stability comes when we move away from a broken system." Kennedy shook his head, not buying it. "Empowerment? Or are you just using people to build your own empire? You talk about decentralization, but this is just another way for billionaires to get richer and keep the rest of the world in the dark. I've heard enough about these so-called innovations. They're a bubble, and it's going to burst." Musk leaned forward, his tone more serious now. "Maybe it's a bubble to you, but to millions of others it's a chance to get out from under the thumb of banks and financial systems that don't care about them. Have you ever stopped to think that the bubble might just be the future breaking free from the old guard? The future you're trying to protect. Fan is already crumbling." Kennedy was visibly agitated, but he took a deep breath and pushed forward. "I'm trying to protect the future of our economy. What you're pushing could lead to massive chaos. We're not talking about just a few bad investments. We're talking about the financial system collapsing." The turning point. The conversation continued to escalate, with Musk and Kennedy each digging into their respective positions. Musk was confident, even defiant. Kennedy was equally firm, but now there was a crack in his facade. Kennedy paused for a moment, thinking. His gaze softened for the briefest second, and in that moment something shifted. "You're not wrong that people are struggling with the current system. I know that. And maybe that's where I'm missing the mark. But we can't just throw away everything we know and trust to chase after the next big thing. People will get hurt." Musk nodded slowly. "I don't want anyone to get hurt, but the system you're defending was never built to protect the People who are suffering right now. If we don't disrupt it, nothing will change. If we don't move towards something better, we'll stay stuck in this cycle forever. Kennedy was silent for a long moment, considering Musk's words. He had always been a man of principles, but those principles had to evolve. Could he afford to ignore the reality of the changing world? Finally, Kennedy spoke, his voice quieter but no less firm. So, what now? What's your plan? You want me to back you up on something that doesn't even have the infrastructure to support it? Musk smiled, the tension easing slightly. I'm not asking you to back me up. I'm asking you to join me in shaping the future. Let's find a way to regulate it, sure, but let's not shut it down before we even give it a chance. DOGE isn't the end goal, it's just the beginning. The aftermath as the meeting concluded, neither man had completely convinced the other, but they both knew something had shifted. Kennedy had heard Musk's perspective more clearly than he had anticipated. Musk had seen that Kennedy wasn't just another politician clinging to the past. He was someone who cared deeply about the people he represented. They parted ways with no grand agreement, but the possibility of working together, or at least finding a middle ground, lingered in the air. The world outside was still watching, the media still in a frenzy about what had just transpired. But the real battle wasn't about the words exchanged in that room. It was about what came next. In the wake of the meeting, the media and public took their time to digest what had transpired. Analysts and pundits alike scrambled to interpret the exchange between Musk and Kennedy. Some saw it as a pivotal moment for Dogecoin and perhaps cryptocurrency at large, while others believed Kennedy had stood his ground, fending off Musk's attempts to push the world into uncharted financial waters. Behind closed doors, things were different. While the public feud was still simmering, something unexpected was beginning to form. Kennedy, for all his skepticism, couldn't deny that Musk's argument had struck a chord with him. He couldn't ignore the growing power of digital currencies, nor could he dismiss the vast number of people who were rallying behind them. Meanwhile, Musk, always calculating, always looking to the future, saw the opportunity to bring a powerful ally into his corner. He knew Kennedy wasn't going to jump on board overnight, but he also knew that the senator's influence could be crucial in pushing cryptocurrency forward, particularly in Washington. If they could find some common ground, Musk's dream of a decentralized future might just have a shot at becoming reality. The follow-up a week after their tense meeting, Musk reached out. It wasn't a tweet this time, but a more personal gesture, a handwritten letter. It was brief, but to the point. He knew Kennedy would read it, and that's exactly why he'd chosen this medium. Senator Kennedy, I've always believed that the future of technology isn't about disrupting for the sake of disruption. It's about creating a better world, one that empowers people. I understand your concerns. This system is new and uncertain, but it is also full of potential. I hope you'll take the time to consider that potential. Let's find a way to regulate cryptocurrencies responsibly, but don't let fear of change blind us to the opportunities ahead. Let's build a future where people have control over their financial destiny. I look forward to continuing the conversation. Best, Elon Musk. Kennedy read the letter carefully, feeling the weight of its message. He hadn't expected this. Musk was offering him a partnership, not a battle. It wasn't something Kennedy had anticipated, but it made sense. Musk wasn't looking for a rubber stamp. He wanted someone who could challenge him, someone who could help guide this new frontier in a way that would benefit the people, not just the billionaires. After sitting with the letter for a few hours, Kennedy's resolve softened. He didn't respond right away. But he didn't shut the door either. The meeting of minds a few days later, another meeting was scheduled, this time in a more informal setting. Instead of a stiff conference room in Washington, Musk invited Kennedy to his private office in Palo Alto, California. Musk's sprawling office was filled with futuristic designs, a stark contrast to the traditional spaces Kennedy was accustomed to. As Kennedy walked in, he couldn't help but notice how comfortable Musk seemed in this environment, surrounded by futuristic tech and what appeared to be 1,000 projects in progress. It was clear Musk wasn't just talking about changing the future, he was living it. "Welcome, Senator," Musk greeted with his usual relaxed demeanor. "Glad you could make it." "Thanks for the invite," Kennedy replied, trying to mask his apprehension. "This is quite the setup you've got here," Musk grinned. "It's all part of the vision, but let's get down to it. What's on your mind?" Kennedy didn't waste time. "I've thought a lot about our last conversation, and I'll admit I was too quick to dismiss what you're doing, but I'm still not sold on cryptocurrency. The risks are enormous. The volatility alone could wipe out millions of people's savings." Musk leaned forward, a twinkle in his eye. "I know it's a risk, but so was the internet when it first came around, remember? Everyone said it was a bubble, but look at it now. The truth is, we can't afford to be scared of the unknown forever." "We have to take a leap," Kennedy raised an eyebrow. "And you think this is the leap we should take? Cryptocurrency?" "It's part of the leap, but it's not just about crypto. It's about changing the way we think about money, about decentralization, about freedom. We're creating a new financial system, and I know it's messy, but isn't that how progress happens?" Kennedy exhaled slowly, weighing Musk's words. The senator, despite his traditional nature, had always respected innovation. It was what had built America, and while Musk's methods were unorthodox, there was no denying that his ideas were making waves. "I agree," Kennedy said after a long pause. "But how do we make this system safe? How do we protect people from the chaos you mentioned, without stifling the potential?" Musk smiled. "That's where you come in, Senator. We need someone who understands the regulations, the laws, and how to protect the people without holding them back. Together we can craft something that works for everyone." The proposal, what followed, was a deep dive into the details of how they could work together. Musk laid out his vision, but Kennedy quickly shifted the conversation towards the regulatory side of things. There had to be rules, he argued, to prevent crypto from spiraling out of control. Musk listened intently, offering his thoughts on how cryptocurrency could be regulated without stifling its potential. They spent hours talking about the future of finance, discussing ways to integrate blockchain technology with existing systems, and brainstorming how to ensure that the average person wasn't left behind in the rush to embrace digital currency. By the end of the meeting, they had outlined a tentative framework. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a partnership of sorts between two powerful forces, one grounded in tradition, the other in innovation. The announcement a week later, Kennedy and Musk stood side by side at a press conference. The world was watching, waiting to see if the alliance between the senator and the tech mogul would be the spark that changed the future of finance. Kennedy stepped up to the podium first. "Today I stand here with Elon Musk, not as adversaries but as partners. We recognize that the world of finance is changing, and while we have our differences, we both believe that the future of money should empower individuals, not corporations. We are here to ensure that as we move forward with cryptocurrency, we do so responsibly, with oversight and regulation that protects the American people." Musk followed, his tone optimistic. "The future is decentralized, and together we can make sure that it's a future that works for everyone. This is just the beginning. With regulation and innovation, we'll build a system that's transparent, secure, and available to all." The announcement sent shockwaves through the world. News outlets exploded with headlines. Social media lit up with reactions, some hopeful, some skeptical, and many downright furious. Elon Musk and Senator John Kennedy, once seen as ideological opposites, were now allies in the fight to shape the future of digital finance. But not everyone was thrilled about this unexpected partnership. On Wall Street, traditional financiers were on the defensive. They saw Musk's embrace of cryptocurrency and Kennedy's sudden about-face as a threat to the very foundations of the financial system they had spent decades building. The stock market reacted with a mix of volatility and uncertainty. In Washington, lawmakers who had previously supported Kennedy's cautious approach to cryptocurrency were left scrambling to understand what had just happened. But the most surprising reactions came from the public. To some, it was a breakthrough, a moment, where the government and Silicon Valley had finally found common ground on an issue that could change the world. To others, it was a betrayal, A shift away from the traditional regulated systems that had, for better or worse, kept society functioning. The backlash, while many praised the new alliance, not everyone was as enthusiastic about the idea of merging regulation with Musk's vision for decentralized finance. Some of Kennedy's longtime supporters felt betrayed. They couldn't understand how their trusted senator had gone from a staunch critic of cryptocurrency to standing alongside one of the world's most controversial figures. In the days following the announcement, protests began to form. Citizens who felt left behind by the new system took to the streets in anger, decrying the merger of big tech and politics. The tension was palpable. Kennedy was no stranger to opposition, but this felt different. The press conferences, the endless media questions, the phone calls with colleagues and advisors, everything became more chaotic by the day. He was faced with mounting pressure from his base to back out of the deal, to distance himself from Musk and the cryptocurrency agenda. Inside his office, Kennedy sat down with his closest advisors, grappling with the storm that was brewing around him. "This wasn't supposed to be a political game," he said, his voice tinged with frustration. "We're trying to do something important here, something that might actually work for the people. But everyone's acting like I sold out." One of his advisors, a seasoned political strategist, leaned forward. "Senator, the concern isn't that you sold out. The concern is that you're aligning yourself with a man who is seen by many as reckless. You've made a lot of enemies with this decision, people who have the power to undo everything you've worked for." Kennedy took a deep breath. "I know. But what's the alternative? We can't just ignore this. Musk has a point. The system is broken, and if we don't try to fix it now, when will we?" The strain on relationships as tensions rose, so did the strain on Kennedy's relationships. His colleagues in the Senate, once supportive of his approach to financial regulation, began to question his judgment. A series of private meetings and backdoor discussions revealed that some were already planning to undermine the new partnership before it could gain real traction. But it wasn't just his political colleagues who were starting to pull away. Kennedy's family, who had always been a source of strength for him, was also growing concerned. His wife, Julia, expressed her doubts one evening after the press conference. "I'm not sure this is the fight we should be getting involved in, John," she said, her voice softer than usual. "It's one thing to challenge the system, but this feels like we're stepping into a war we're not prepared for." Kennedy sat quietly for a moment, looking out the window. He had always prided himself on listening to his family, but this time he felt the weight of his duty to the future, to the people who were counting on him. "I know it's risky, but sometimes the only way forward is to take those risks. If we don't try now, when will we? The people who need us are counting on us to make a change." Julia sighed but didn't push further. She knew he was determined, and perhaps deep down she understood that this was a fight he couldn't walk away from Musk's quiet confidence. Meanwhile, Musk seemed unfazed by the chaos unfolding around him. In his usual style, he remained focused on the long-term vision. He knew that there would be pushback, especially from those who benefited from the old system, but he was prepared. If anything, the pressure only fueled his determination. His team worked tirelessly behind the scenes, continuing to push the boundaries of what was possible with Dogecoin and other cryptocurrencies. As the media continued to bombard him with questions, Musk remained calm and collected, always pointing to the future. "We're not trying to break the system," Musk told a reporter during a live interview. "We're trying to build something better. The truth is, technology moves faster than governments and institutions can keep up, but we can't afford to wait for them to catch up. We have to move forward." The key turning point weeks passed, and the public's attention began to shift. The intensity of the protests began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of curiosity. People, especially younger generations, were still following the developments closely, eager to see where this bold experiment in decentralized finance would lead. Musk and Kennedy's collaboration was still very much in its infancy, but behind the scenes they were making significant strides. Musk had proposed a new approach, creating a regulatory framework that would encourage innovation without stifling it. He suggested a collaborative effort between Washington and Silicon Valley, one that would bring together the brightest minds from both worlds to craft a new system of financial governance. Kennedy, despite the pressure, found himself coming around to the idea. Maybe this is the solution, he thought. Maybe the only way to protect the people is to embrace the change, but on our terms. A small group of experts, technologists, economists, and policymakers was brought together to draft what would become known as the Kennedy-Musk framework. The proposal was bold, seeking to create a regulatory body for cryptocurrency that would be agile enough to adapt to new innovations while protecting consumers and investors. The new path forward. In the months that followed, the Kennedy-Musk framework began to take shape. The tension had not entirely dissipated, but the partnership between the senator and the tech mogul was evolving into something more collaborative and productive. They were no longer adversaries, but unlikely allies pushing toward a new financial future. While the road ahead remained uncertain, one thing was clear. The future of cryptocurrency, of Dogecoin, blockchain, and decentralized finance was no longer a fringe conversation. It was a mainstream issue that politicians, innovators, and everyday people were taking seriously. The months after the announcement of the Kennedy-Musk framework were anything but smooth. While progress was being made behind closed doors, the public perception of the partnership was still volatile. It seemed like for every new supporter, there was a loud voice of opposition. Musk, always the visionary, saw the future. But for Kennedy, it was harder to tell whether they were building something that would change the world or something that would implode under its own ambition. At first, the initial meetings of the new regulatory body, composed of technologists, economists, and regulators, seemed to be moving forward with a sense of purpose. They were drawing up guidelines and frameworks that promised to strike a balance between regulation and innovation, something that could, in theory, protect consumers while still encouraging the growth of cryptocurrency. But as the discussions deepened, cracks started to appear. The resistance grows. As the weeks went by, tensions began to rise. Members of the new regulatory body started to argue over how far-reaching the regulations should be. Some argued for stringent controls, fearing the instability of cryptocurrencies and the potential for market manipulation. Others, inspired by Musk's radical approach, pushed for minimal interference, believing that overregulation would kill the very thing they were trying to protect. Kennedy, who had always been a pragmatist, found himself caught in the middle. He understood the fears of the regulators, many of whom had years of experience in traditional financial systems, but he also recognized the power of innovation that Musk championed. The system they were trying to build needed to be flexible, not stifling. Too much regulation will kill the progress we've already made, Musk often reminded the team, his voice unwavering. But Kennedy's instincts told him they couldn't go too far in the other direction either. "We need to protect the people," he would argue. "We can't just let the market dictate who wins and who loses. There has to be a framework for fairness." As the debates intensified, the partnership between Kennedy and Musk was starting to show signs of strain. Kennedy's concerns about consumer protection, alongside Musk's desire for free market exploration, seemed to be at odds more and more often. A defining moment, one of the defining moments of this conflict, came when a major financial crisis in the cryptocurrency market took place. A prominent cryptocurrency exchange, which had been a key player in the growing decentralized finance ecosystem, was hacked. Billions of dollars in digital assets were stolen, and thousands of investors lost everything. The fallout was swift. News outlets blared the headlines across the globe, and social media was flooded with outrage. How could this happen? Who was responsible for ensuring that such an event didn't destroy the industry? Was this the risk Musk had promised people would come with innovation? Or was this a sign that the system needed far more oversight than anyone had imagined? Kennedy was furious. He immediately began pushing for more stringent protections for investors. "This is the reality of what we're dealing with," he said in an impassioned speech to the Senate. "People are losing their life savings because there's no regulation, there's no safety net. This is why we need to act now, before it's too late." Musk, however, took a different approach. In a tweet that quickly went viral, he stated, "We can't be afraid of the failures. We have to embrace them and learn. The future isn't without risk, but it's also not about sheltering people from every setback. The real problem is the lack of transparency, not innovation itself." The public response was swift and the media turned on them both. Critics accused Musk of being reckless and out of touch with the reality of the situation, while Kennedy was criticized for not doing enough to protect consumers in the first place. Kennedy's dilemma. Kennedy sat in his office, exhausted, staring at the endless emails and messages flooding his inbox. He had always prided himself on being a protector of the people, a defender of the vulnerable. But now, in the face of the crisis, he was beginning to question whether he had made the right choice. "I never imagined it would get this far," Kennedy said to his chief of staff, pacing back and forth. "We're on the edge of something big, but it's starting to feel like we're teetering on the brink of disaster." His chief of staff, a seasoned political strategist who had seen many storms come and go, was more pragmatic. "This is the moment, Senator. The whole point of your partnership with Musk was to bring stability to a volatile space. Now you have the chance to lead. People are watching to see if you're willing to take the reins and make it work, or if you'll back down." Kennedy stopped pacing and looked out the window. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The stakes had never been higher. A moment of clarity late that night, as Kennedy sat alone in his office, he found himself reflecting on the journey he had taken. He thought about his early days in politics, his rise to prominence, and his desire to make a real difference. He had always believed in the importance of progress, of moving society forward. But now more than ever, he realized that progress didn't come without its cost. He remembered the people he had spoken to, his constituents, the families who depended on the security of the old financial systems. He thought about the young, people who were turning to cryptocurrencies, who saw it as their ticket to financial freedom. He thought about Musk, who had always been the dreamer, the one who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. For the first time, Kennedy allowed himself to see beyond the political ramifications, the media frenzy, and the outrage. He realized that this wasn't just about regulation. It was about building a system that would work for everyone. It was about empowering individuals, not just corporations. With newfound clarity, Kennedy picked up the phone and called Musk. "Musk," he said, his voice steady, "we're going to make this work, but we need to find a way to protect people. It's not enough to just push forward. We need a system that safeguards the future of decentralized finance, one that works for everyone, not just the tech elites." Let's get this right. The turning point. The phone call marked a turning point in their partnership. They were no longer just two figures with differing views on the future of finance. They were now partners in the truest sense, united by a shared goal of building something bigger than themselves. The Kennedy-Musk framework was about to undergo a major revision, one that would take into account the real-world consequences of a financial system that, for all its promise, needed to be safe and sustainable. As the media continued to buzz with speculation, Musk and Kennedy got to work. Behind closed doors, they began to hammer out the details of a new plan, a comprehensive, balanced approach that would allow cryptocurrencies to thrive, but under the oversight necessary to protect the public from the risks that had recently been laid bare. The road ahead was still filled with uncertainty, but for the first time, both Musk and Kennedy felt like they were heading in the right direction. The pressure on Elon Musk and Senator John Kennedy was reaching a boiling point. The world was watching as they moved closer to unveiling the revised version of the Kennedy-Musk framework, which had been carefully crafted in the wake of the cryptocurrency crash that had shaken the market. The media's scrutiny intensified with each passing day, while various political figures, tech moguls, and financial experts all weighed in on whether the new plan would work or be just another failed experiment. The naysayers were loud, but Kennedy and Musk knew they had to push forward no matter the odds. A moment of doubt in the days leading up to the big announcement, Kennedy found himself struggling with doubts. He had made difficult decisions before, but this was different. This partnership with Musk was a gamble, one that could either transform the financial landscape or leave him looking like a fool. Sitting in his Washington office late one evening, Kennedy reviewed the final draft of the framework. He had the weight of the nation on his shoulders, knowing that this would either be his greatest legacy or the source of irreparable political damage. His phone rang, snapping him from his thoughts. It was Musk. "John, you ready for this?" Musk's voice was calm, yet there was an unmistakable hint of excitement in his tone. Kennedy paused before answering, unsure of what to say. "I don't know anymore, Elon. Everything's on the line. What if we've miscalculated? What if we're setting people up for another disaster?" Musk's laugh broke through the tension. "You've been asking yourself that for weeks now. The truth is, we can't predict everything. But if we don't take action now, if we don't push forward, we risk letting things stay the same. And staying the same? That's not an option anymore." Kennedy sighed. "You're right. But I need to make sure this is going to protect people. It's one thing to innovate, it's another to make sure the system doesn't leave the average person behind." Musk's tone softened. "I get it. John, that's why we're doing this together. We're going to make sure this works for everyone, but we can't let fear stop us from trying." The public announcement. The day of the announcement arrived. The atmosphere was tense, with the press packed into the Senate chamber. The entire world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to hear what Kennedy and Musk had been working on in secret. As Kennedy stepped up to the podium, the cameras flashed, capturing every moment. Behind him, Musk stood silently, his arms crossed, an air of quiet confidence surrounding him. Kennedy began speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we are announcing a new framework that will shape the future of digital finance. It's no secret that the financial system as it stands has significant flaws. For too long, the people have been left behind by a system that favors the powerful and the elite." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But today, we're taking a step forward. We're working with visionaries, people like Elon Musk who believe in a future where technology empowers individuals, not just institutions. Together, we've crafted a proposal that balances the need for innovation with the protections necessary to ensure that cryptocurrencies are safe, sustainable, and transparent." Musk stepped forward and addressed the audience. "This framework is not just about cryptocurrency. It's about rethinking the way we think about money. It's about allowing people to take control of their financial futures without fear of manipulation, corruption, or the instability that has plagued the traditional system for far too long." The room was silent as the weight of their words settled in. Kennedy continued, outlining the key aspects of the new plan: a regulatory body to oversee the cryptocurrency market, but with the flexibility to evolve with the industry, increased transparency to ensure consumer protections, and provisions to ensure that decentralized finance platforms were accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or financial knowledge. The aftermath as the announcement made headlines across the globe. The reactions were mixed, as expected. Some financial analysts praised the framework for its foresight, believing it would pave the way for a more stable cryptocurrency market. Others, especially in traditional finance, were skeptical, viewing it as a step too far into uncharted territory. But the most significant shift came from the public. Where once there had been protests and fear of market crashes, there was now a sense of cautious optimism. People began to believe that this partnership between Kennedy and Musk was not just a publicity stunt, but a real attempt at reform. Behind the scenes, however, the battle was far from over. The crypto market began to stabilize, but there were still plenty of challenges to face, especially from the institutional investors and regulators who had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. The road ahead. The next few months were a whirlwind. Musk and Kennedy traveled across the country, speaking at events, meeting with world leaders, and continuing to shape the digital finance landscape. Every day was filled with new challenges, legal battles, political opposition, and technical hurdles, but they remained steadfast in their mission. As the dust began to settle, it became clear that their work was far from finished. But they had made it through the most dangerous part. The framework was now in place, and it had the support of a growing coalition of policymakers, technologists, and everyday people who believed in the potential of decentralized finance. Kennedy, once a skeptic, had come to see the vision that Musk had laid out all along. And Musk, who had always been a disruptor, began to realize that the system he was building needed to be sustainable, not just innovative. Together, they had created something that was bigger than themselves, a blueprint for a new financial future. That was still a work in progress, but was already changing the way people thought about money. The final reflection, as Kennedy sat in his office, reflecting on the journey that had led him here, he felt a sense of pride. He had taken risks, made enemies, and fought for something he believed could make a difference. And now, as he looked at the future, he could see that they had created something that had the power to reshape the world. Sometimes, he thought, the hardest battles are the ones that are worth fighting. Months had passed since the introduction of the Kennedy-Musk framework, and the digital finance world was beginning to adjust to the new regulations. While critics continued to voice their concerns, there was a palpable shift in the air. The CE framework had managed to stabilize the market, creating a sense of trust that had long been absent in the volatile world of cryptocurrency. The public, once divided, was starting to rally behind the bold vision Musk and Kennedy had brought to life. A shift in perspective. In the weeks that followed the announcement, Kennedy found himself sitting in more meetings with tech leaders, economists, and financial experts than ever before. Conversations that once centered on the potential risks of cryptocurrency were now dominated by discussions of its future, how to make it more accessible, how to build decentralized applications that could revolutionize healthcare, education, and finance. The world had shifted. Cryptocurrency was no longer a fringe idea. It was becoming a staple of the global financial system. And though the path forward remained uncertain, Kennedy could no longer deny that they had created something transformative. For Musk, the journey had also been one of growth. The man known for his larger-than-life ambitions and unorthodox methods had learned to temper his boundless enthusiasm with a deeper understanding of the consequences that came with innovation. The collapse of the exchange months earlier had left its mark on him, as it had on Kennedy. But where others might have retreated, Musk had pushed forward, more determined than ever to prove that the vision was worth the sacrifice. They were no longer just two figures with opposing views on the future. They had become the architects of a new era, an era where technology and finance could coexist in a way that empowered the people rather than leaving them behind. The first successes in the months that followed, the effects of the framework began to ripple out into the world. New cryptocurrency platforms launched with greater transparency and security, adhering to the guidelines set out by the regulatory body. Investors, once wary, began to return to the market, their confidence boosted by the stability that the framework provided. Decentralized finance, DeFi applications, became more widespread, allowing everyday people to access financial tools that had once been reserved for the elite. Peer-to-peer lending platforms flourished, and blockchain technology started to make its way into other industries, healthcare, supply chain management, and even government services. The impact was felt far beyond just the financial world. Kennedy and Musk had managed to bridge the gap between innovation and regulation, creating a system that allowed for progress without sacrificing security. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. The global ripple, but the real success came when the ripple effect of their framework reached other countries. The idea that decentralized finance could be regulated while still maintaining its core values spread across borders. Countries that had once been skeptical of cryptocurrency began to adopt similar frameworks, seeing the potential for economic growth and financial inclusion. Kennedy and Musk were invited to speak at international summits, where they were hailed as pioneers, the visionaries who had created a global blueprint for financial reform. The world was watching as their partnership transformed not just the American financial system, but the global one. A legacy secured one evening, months after the initial launch, Kennedy and Musk stood on the balcony of a high-rise building in Washington, overlooking the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the Capitol building in the distance. They had just come from a meeting with the president, where they had outlined the next steps for the continued evolution of the framework. The tension that had once defined their partnership was gone. They had faced countless obstacles, but they had come through it all together. "We did it," Kennedy said, his voice soft but full of pride. Musk smiled, his characteristic energy still present despite the long journey. "We're just getting started. The framework is only the beginning. Now we need to keep pushing, keep innovating. The world's watching us, John." Kennedy nodded, looking out over the city. "And the people will never forget what we've done." The final lesson, Kennedy's thoughts drifted back to those early days, when he had been uncertain, when the partnership seemed like a risk. He remembered the pressure, the weight of the decisions they had made. There had been moments of doubt, moments when he had questioned if they were truly on the right path. But in the end, they had done something few others had the courage to do. They had combined the best of both worlds, regulation and innovation, and created something new. The final lesson, Kennedy realized, was one that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Change was never easy, and the road to progress was often filled with challenges. But the key was in believing in the possibility of a better future and having the courage to fight for it, no matter how daunting it seemed. The road ahead, as Kennedy and Musk continued to navigate the complex world of digital finance, they knew that the future was still uncertain. There would be setbacks. There would be those who opposed their vision, but they were no longer afraid of what lay ahead. They had built something that had the potential to change the world, and they were determined to see it through. For the first time in a long time, both men felt a sense of peace, a sense that the work they had started together was far from over, but it was in the right hands. The future of cryptocurrency, of decentralized finance, and of a new global financial system was now in motion. And whatever challenges awaited, Kennedy and Musk were ready to face them side by side. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. The journey of the Kennedy-Musk framework is far from over, and we want to know, what do you think the future holds for cryptocurrency? Will it continue to evolve, or will we see another shift in the financial world?